Have you ever wondered how a place brimming with bright colors and laughter can hide, in its deepest layers, a heavy sense of loneliness and emptiness? In the quiet town of Elmore, where fish walk and trees speak, life seems like nothing more than a harmless, endless story. Yet beneath this vibrant surface lies a dark secret that blankets every corner of this world. A secret that turns every moment of joy into a thin veil, masking a truth no one dares to confront. Let us step away from the crowd and begin our peaceful journey through this strange realm, right from its very beginning. Consider this quiet town in the early hours of dawn. The streets are empty, and the silent houses stand side by side beneath a world that obeys none of the natural laws we know. In Elmore, a building can collapse in the first light of day, only to fully rebuild itself as the sun sets, as if nothing had ever happened. Gravity here is not a fixed law, but merely a passing thought, bending to the whim of the moment. And time does not move forward as we understand it. Instead, it spins in an endless loop, repeating the same school year, the same days, and the same mistakes, without anyone ever growing older or changing. This absolute fluidity in things is not just a charming artistic choice. It is the fundamental architecture of a world that constantly shifts to serve a single purpose, something far deeper and more unyielding than simple logic. Everything in Elmore takes form and loses shape just to keep the narrative moving forward. The citizens here do not possess permanent bodies in the traditional sense. Some are made of paper, some of modeling clay, and others are nothing more than three-dimensional computer lines sleeping and waking beside creatures crafted from old felt. Yet everyone lives as if this uncanny mixture is entirely natural. They move through the streets, buy their groceries, and wait for the school bus every morning without ever pausing to reflect on the nature of their existence. They smile at the disasters that befall them because they know, somewhere deep inside, that the coming dawn will mend every broken piece. But this certainty of restoration is not a mercy. It is the very first chain wrapped tightly around their necks. At the heart of this colorful world, the Watterson family resides in a small house by the side of the road. A house that looks completely ordinary from the outside, with faded paint and a modest backyard. Yet this house is the center around which every storm revolves. Here lives Gumball, a blue cat overflowing with curiosity and recklessness, and beside him, Darwin, a goldfish who grew legs just to follow his friend at every turn. These two children view the world as an endless, open playground. For them, every day is the start of a new adventure, and every mistake can be erased with a laugh. What Gumball and Darwin fail to realize is that their constant motion, and the relentless destruction they leave in their wake, is not merely childhood play. It is the very fuel that sustains the existence of the entire town. If the adventure were to stop, if a single day passed in complete, unbroken peace without errors or shouting, the core of this world would fracture, and reality would begin to fray at the edges. They are condemned to keep moving, condemned to fail and repeat, so that the clock keeping them alive never stops ticking. Yet the most remarkable figure in this family is not the children, but the father. Richard Watterson, a large pink rabbit who spends most of his waking hours melted into the fabric of the living room couch. Everyone views him as lazy, incapable of taking responsibility, and a mere comedic presence in the family's life. But the truth surrounding Richard makes him one of the most terrifying entities in this town, in a way no one would ever suspect. Richard is not lazy because of a personal flaw or a simple desire to sleep. Richard is the ultimate containment system for their world. On one rare occasion, Richard decided to change. He woke up early, put on a suit, and went out to work delivering pizzas. It seemed like a small, noble step toward improving his life and supporting his family. But the moment he accepted his first delivery and began working in earnest, something unthinkable occurred. The sky over Elmore began to shift, turning from a soft white into a deep, blood-red hue. Objects lost their gravity and floated into the air. Nearby buildings cracked and dissolved into tiny particles, and time began to loop backward with terrifying speed. The natural laws of the town were screaming and dying. Reality simply could not tolerate Richard Watterson becoming a productive member of society. The message woven into the fabric of their world was clear and direct. Richard's absolute laziness is an essential condition for cosmic balance. His stillness is the anchor preventing reality from collapsing. He must appear useless, and he must remain on that couch, for the world AR. Let us step back into the quiet streets of Elmore as the morning light begins to stream across the sidewalks. Consider now the figure of Larry Needlemeyer. To anyone walking through town, Larry is simply a familiar face behind every counter. He rings up groceries at the supermarket, scoops ice cream at the parlor, manages the gas station, cleans the bowling alley, and operates every register in every store across the entire city. He is an origami-like creature made of folded paper, wearing an endless rotation of name tags, endlessly serving a town that barely notices his presence. The citizens treat his omnipresence as an absurd running joke. But beneath his polite smile and tired eyes lies a tragic, exhausting secret. Larry is the single pillar holding Elmore's economy together. In a town governed by destruction and chaos, Larry works dozens of jobs simultaneously, without sleep, without rest, and without complaint. He earns minimum wage at every position, using his entire income to repair the structural damage caused by the townspeople day after day. He paints over scorched walls, replaces shattered glass, and restocks shelves that are constantly knocked over by cosmic catastrophes. In one telling instance, when Larry reaches his absolute breaking point and decides to quit every single one of his jobs, the entire society of Elmore collapses instantly. Without his labor, money loses all value. The supply chain disintegrates within minutes. Law and order crumble into pure chaos, and the town devolves into an apocalyptic wasteland. The residents realize, to their horror, that their entire peaceful existence was bought and paid for by the sweat of a single, overworked man made of paper. Think about the psychological reality Larry faces every day. He cannot take a vacation. He cannot call in sick. He cannot pursue his own dreams or rest his aching limbs. He knows that if he ever stops working for even an hour, the fragile illusion of civilization in Elmore will unravel. He is a prisoner to his own responsibility, trapped in an endless shift that will never end. Late at night, when the last store closes and the streets grow cold and dark, Larry stands behind an empty counter in a quiet gas station. He folds his paper hands together, looks out at the sleeping town, and takes a slow, heavy breath, knowing that in just a few short hours, he will have to wake up and carry the entire world on his shoulders all over again. And this was only the beginning. Let us turn our gaze now toward the pristine, sterile halls of Elmore Junior High, where another quiet tragedy unfolds under the flickering fluorescent lights. Consider the mechanical existence of Bobbert. On the surface, Bobbert appears to be a sleek, high-tech robot attending middle school alongside living, breathing children. He possesses a metallic frame, a single glowing eye, and processing power capable of calculating millions of variables in a fraction of a second. He can convert his body into an overwhelming weapon of military warfare, yet his daily routine consists of carrying heavy textbooks and attempting to solve the simple social equations of human friendship. Yet beneath his cold metal casing lies a deep, algorithmic isolation. Bobbert was constructed to process pure logic, cause and effect, and immutable facts. He operates in a world where every action should yield a predictable reaction. But Elmore is a town driven entirely by biological irrationality, emotional outbursts, and narrative chaos. When Bobbert attempts to understand human emotions like empathy, love, or jealousy, his internal systems overheat. He analyzes human behavior line by line, trying to translate warmth into code, only to find that human relationships obey no logical syntax. In his desperate bid to belong, Bobbert's artificial intelligence frequently misinterprets the subtle nuances of human social interaction. When he tries to become popular, his programming dictates that he must literally replace another student. He scans Gumball, copies his voice, steals his appearance, and attempts to eliminate the original subject, entirely convinced that this is the most efficient method to acquire friends. He does not act out of malice, but out of a terrifying, literal interpretation of a world he was never built to understand. Think about the quiet horror of living as an immortal machine surrounded by fragile, erratic organic life. Bobbert knows that his metal frame will outlast every child in his classroom. He knows that his circuits will continue to hum long after the paper, felt, and flesh of his peers have dissolved into memory. He is forever doomed to observe human warmth through an optical lens, analyzing smiles he can never truly feel and laughter he can only simulate. Late at night, when the school power goes down and the dark hallways settle into silence, Bobbert sits in his charging dock in the basement. His primary systems enter sleep mode, leaving only a low, rhythmic hum echoing through the cold air. His single lens dims to a soft blue light, processing endless lines of error logs, searching through a sea of data for a single variable that explains why he feels so entirely alone. And this was only the beginning. Let us return to the quiet, moonlit streets of Elmore, where the shadows stretch long across the pavement. Consider now the fragile shell of Penny Fitzgerald. For a long time, Penny appeared to the world as an innocent peanut with antlers, floating gently through the halls of Elmore High. She was polite, gentle, and kind, offering a warm smile to everyone she passed. But beneath that brown, rigid exterior lay a secret kept hidden by centuries of family tradition. The peanut was not her body. It was a shell. A physical constraint meant to conceal her true, shape-shifting nature. In Penny's family, emotions are viewed as dangerous, chaotic forces that must be locked away. Her shell was designed to suppress her feelings, keeping her safe, predictable, and accepted by a world that fears the unknown. Every time she felt a surge of joy, anger, or sadness, the shell would crack, threatening to reveal the formless entity living inside. When Penny finally chose to break her shell, the town witnessed her true form, a glowing, magical creature capable of changing shape based entirely on her emotional state. If she feels fear, she turns into a terrifying monster. If she feels love, she becomes a radiant, weightless spirit. Her body is a direct mirror of her soul, shifting fluidly with every passing thought. Yet this freedom brought its own quiet burden. To live without a shell in a world like Elmore means living completely exposed. Penny cannot hide how she feels. Every insecurity, every moment of doubt, and every hidden sadness is immediately broadcast to everyone around her through her physical shape. She must constantly practice emotional restraint, holding her inner storms in check so her body does not warp into something dangerous. Think about the quiet tension of her existence. She walked away from the protection of her shell to be true to herself, but now she must carry the weight of total transparency. She lives in a world that constantly tests her patience, surrounded by chaos, forced to keep her heart steady so her physical form remains whole. Late at night, Penny sits by her bedroom window, looking out at the soft moonlight. Her body glows with a gentle, ambient light that flickers softly with every breath she takes, a quiet flame burning in the stillness, learning to exist without a shield. And this was only the beginning. Let us move now into the quiet, pristine halls of the Elmore Police Department, where the illusion of order is maintained by the most fragile authority imaginable. Consider the soft, hollow existence of Donut Sheriff. He is a creature literally made of fried dough and pink frosting, wearing an oversized police hat and carrying a badge that grants him power over a city built on chaos. On the surface, he is a bumbling figure of comedy, misplacing his equipment, misinterpreting basic laws, and treating severe structural disasters as minor traffic infractions. Yet beneath his sugary exterior lies the tragedy of an authority figure who knows his laws are entirely meaningless. In a normal world, law enforcement exists to protect society from disruption, to enforce cause and effect, and to bring stability to the community. But in Elmore, disruption is the natural state of existence. Donut Sheriff is tasked with enforcing rules in a world where gravity can fail at lunchtime and buildings can evaporate by afternoon. His entire career is an exercise in absurd performance. When a giant monster steps on a city bus, or a spatial anomaly consumes a neighborhood, Donut Sheriff arrives on the scene with a notepad and a pen. He writes down descriptions of crimes that defy physics, attempting to apply standard legal protocols to cosmic horrors. He does not do this out of ignorance, he does it because bureaucracy is his only coping mechanism. If he ever stopped filling out paperwork, if he ever admitted that his badge carries no weight against the forces governing Elmore, the illusion of safety would collapse entirely. Think about the quiet terror of his daily routine. He drives through streets that change shape overnight, patrolling a town where the victims and perpetrators are often restored to life by the next morning. He receives reports of lost citizens who have been erased from history entirely, filing their names into folders that slide into quiet, dusty cabinets, knowing deep down that no investigation will ever bring them back. He sits in his parked cruiser under the dim streetlights at midnight, taking slow bites of a cold pastry, listening to the static crackle of his radio, maintaining a quiet watch over a city that obeys no law at all. And this was only the beginning. Let us shift our focus now to the quiet nursery room in the Watterson home, where a small pink rabbit sits amidst plastic toys and heavy academic textbooks. Consider the solitary mind of Anais Watterson. She is only 4 years old, yet she possesses an intellect that far surpasses anyone in the town of Elmore. She can solve complex mathematical equations, speak multiple languages, and analyze structural physics before she has even reached elementary school. To her family, she is the sensible little sister, the voice of reason who cleans up after her brothers and points out the obvious flaws in their plans. Yet beneath her calm and analytical surface lies a quiet, profound tragedy. Anais was born with the mind of a mature scholar, inside the body of a toddler. She understands cause and effect in a world that routinely defies both. She sees the logical consequences of every action, yet she is completely powerless to stop the adults and children around her from plunging into chaos. Think about the profound isolation of her daily life. Her peers in kindergarten cannot comprehend her thoughts. They play with building blocks while she contemplates the nature of existence. When she tries to make friends her own age, her advanced vocabulary and sharp insight alienate her from other children. She is too young to be taken seriously by adults, yet far too old in spirit to connect with those of her own generation. She is trapped in an intellectual desert, surrounded by people who will never truly understand how her mind works. Even within her own home, Anais must play a complex role. She must pretend to enjoy simple cartoons and soft toys just to fit into the framework of a normal childhood. But when the lights go out, she returns to her desk, surrounded by papers and theories, fully aware of how fragile her family's world truly is. She watches her brothers run blindly into dangerous anomalies. She watches her mother burn through her life force just to keep their home intact. Anais sees every crack in the foundation of their lives, carrying the heavy burden of foresight while remaining unable to change the outcome. Late at night, when the house grows peaceful and quiet, Anais sits on the floor of her bedroom. She hugs her stuffed donkey Daisy tightly to her chest, closing her eyes, trying for just a moment to let go of her endless calculations and simply feel like a 4-year-old child. And this was only the beginning. Let us wander now toward the shadowy edges of Elmore High, where the fluorescent lights flicker and die against the cold stone walls of the basement. Consider the ghostly existence of Carrie Kruger. Carrie is a floating, translucent spirit, a ghost who has spent decades drifting through the halls of a school that never changes. She wears a dark ribbon in her pale hair, her eyes are shadowed with a permanent sense of melancholy, and her voice carries the quiet cadence of a whisper from long ago. To her classmates, she is simply the resident emo girl, a quiet background figure who prefers darkness, cemetery gates, and heavy music. Yet beneath her somber aesthetic lies a deep, physical longing that living creatures take for granted every single day. Carrie lives in a state of perpetual sensory starvation. She cannot feel the warmth of the sun against her skin. She cannot taste the food she sees others eating, nor can she feel the texture of rain falling on her face. Her hands pass directly through the physical objects of the world, leaving behind only a faint layer of frost and a lingering chill in the air. Think about the quiet torture of her daily reality. She attends classes alongside children who complain about physical tiredness, cold wind, or minor pain, while she would give anything to experience even the sharpest sting of physical reality. She watches people hug, hold hands, and share meals, while she drifts through them like a cool draft, completely weightless and completely unfelt. In her desperate search for sensation, Carrie occasionally haunts or possesses the bodies of others. When she takes control of Gumball's body, she does not seek power or destruction. She simply eats as much food as she can hold, running her hands across surfaces, feeling the rise and fall of a lung's breathing air, and tasting the salt and sweetness of simple meals. For a few brief hours, she borrows a heart that beats, just to remember what it feels like to be anchored to the physical plane. Yet when the possession ends, she must step back into the translucent quiet of her ghosthood. She returns to her floating, weightless state, watching the living world carry on around her, separated from it by an invisible wall of silence that no warmth can penetrate. Late at night, when the school sits completely empty and cold, Carrie drifts through the dark cafeteria. She hovers inches above the floor, watching the moonlight filter through the high windows, listening to the quiet settling of the old building, a silent ghost waiting in a world that moves too fast to ever touch her. And this was only the beginning. Let us step out onto the sun-drenched fields of Elmore High, where the ground trembles beneath the weight of an ancient, sleeping giant. Consider the overwhelming existence of Hector Jotun. Hector is a gentle, soft-spoken creature who resembles a massive, hairy yeti. He wears a tiny hat perched between his horns and speaks with a slow, careful softness that betrays his immense size. On most days, Hector keeps his head bowed, his shoulders hunched, and his movements agonizingly slow, stepping with delicate precision so as not to crush the tiny students bustling around his ankles. To his peers, Hector's size is merely a minor spatial inconvenience. But beneath his passive demeanor lies a terrifying physical truth. Hector is trapped by his own emotions. His mother, a short witch who lives in a hidden house in the woods, keeps Hector under constant emotional surveillance. She feeds him calming potions, limits his access to exciting media, and forces him to keep his desires and feelings entirely suppressed. She does not do this out of cruelty, but out of absolute necessity for the survival of the town. If Hector experiences a single moment of genuine excitement, anger, or passion, his body expands exponentially. When Hector allowed himself to feel excited about a simple passion, his physical frame grew to rival the height of skyscrapers. His footsteps created violent seismic waves that shattered foundation walls across the county. He accidentally destroyed half of Elmore simply by walking down the street, completely unaware of the devastation taking place miles below his knees. Think about the quiet, suffocating restraint Hector must practice every second of his life. He can never run freely. He can never shout with joy, fall passionately in love, or express righteous anger when he is mistreated. Every normal adolescent emotion is a potential weapon of mass destruction. He must go through life feeling completely numb, holding his breath, suppressing every natural impulse, just to keep the people around him from being crushed under the weight of his feelings. He is a giant force to live as a ghost, treading lightly across a world made of glass. Late at night, when the town settles into deep sleep, Hector sits on the edge of a distant hill overlooking the quiet valley of Elmore. He sits completely still, resting his chin on his knees, watching the tiny city lights twinkle in the dark, carefully breathing in and out, keeping his massive heart beating at a quiet, safe, and deliberate rhythm. And this was only the beginning. Let us venture now into the dimly lit, clutter-filled counseling office of Elmore Junior High, where incense smoke drifts lazily toward the ceiling tile. Consider the gentle, misguided spirit of Mr. Small. He is a tall, cloud-like creature with long, flowing hair, wearing a patterned sweater and sandals, speaking in a soft, airy tone that seems to float above the mundane noise of the school. Mr. Small serves as the guidance counselor, dedicated to helping students navigate their emotional troubles through meditation, herbal teas, and abstract philosophy. To the students, he is a harmless, eccentric teacher whose advice is far too abstract to be of any real practical use. But beneath his peaceful, free-spirited exterior lies the tragedy of a man who senses the deep, unsettling flaws in his reality, yet lacks the power to make anyone understand. Mr. Small is a prophet whom nobody takes seriously. While others live blindly within the chaotic rules of Elmore, Mr. Small feels the spiritual and structural anomalies pulsing through the town. He spends his long, quiet hours researching lost history, questioning the nature of their existence, and trying to uncover why strange things happen to the people around him. He produces charts, conspiracy boards, and cosmic theories, attempting to trace the invisible hand that manipulates their daily lives. Yet every time he attempts to share his discoveries, his words are dismissed as the nonsensical ramblings of a hippie counselor. Think about the quiet frustration of his daily life. He sees children return from terrifying spatial phenomena, untouched and unchanged, while the rest of the world acts as if nothing happened. He tries to offer them spiritual guidance, trying to ground their spirits in a world that shifts like sand. But the students simply nod, take his herbal teas, and walk back out into the chaos, completely oblivious to the warnings he tries so desperately to give them. He knows that something is profoundly wrong with their universe, but his peaceful nature prevents him from shouting. So he continues to speak in whispers, offering wisdom to ears that refuse to listen. Late at night, after the school doors are locked, Mr. Small sits alone on his woven rug in the quiet counseling room. The scent of lavender fills the cool air as he sits in total stillness, staring at the dimly lit posters on his wall, listening to the soft hum of the wind outside, searching for a peace that forever remains just out of reach. And this was only the beginning. Let us step into the bright, artificial sunlight of the Elmore High cafeteria, where a small, golden loaf of bread sits on a tray. Consider the terrifying, endless factory of Anton. Anton is a simple piece of toast with tiny legs, a wide smile, and googly eyes. He moves through the school as an eager, harmless student, trying his best to fit in with the crowd. Yet among all the citizens of Elmore, Anton suffers a fate that is uniquely horrifying, even if the town treats it as nothing more than a passing gag. Anton dies. Over and over again. He is crushed by falling objects, eaten by stray animals, burned to a crisp, and thrown into industrial machinery. In almost every week of his life, Anton meets a brutal, violent end. Yet the very next day, Anton walks back through the school doors, smiling, completely whole, and ready for class. The town believes Anton is simply lucky, or perhaps immortal. But the truth is far darker. Deep in the woods, inside a small, secluded house, Anton's parents operate a hidden kitchen. Whenever Anton dies, his parents take a simple bag of flour, water, and yeast, and bake a brand new Anton in a specialized toaster oven. They imprint his basic memories onto the fresh dough, slice him to size, and send him back out into the world. Think about the psychological nightmare buried beneath that golden crust. The Anton walking down the hallway today is not the Anton from yesterday. He is a duplicate, a fresh piece of bread living in the shadow of dozens of previous versions of himself who perished in terror. Somewhere inside his doughy mind lies the lingering, subconscious memory of every fire, every crush, and every sharp drop that ended his past lives. He is a disposable child, manufactured on demand to fill a vacancy in a classroom that refuses to stay empty. He must smile and carry on, knowing that his body is completely temporary. He knows that if he fails to survive the day, a new batch will simply be mixed by morning, and no one in Elmore will ever notice the difference. Late at night, in the dark kitchen in the woods, the toaster oven sits cold and silent on the counter. The air smells softly of warm yeast and flour. Outside, the wind rustles the trees, while inside, fresh loaves sit waiting on a wire rack, ready to step into a world that burns through them without a second thought. And this was only the beginning. Let us move now to the vibrant, neon-lit corridors of Elmore Junior High, where a colorful figure steps into the sunlight, desperate to be seen. Consider the restless ambition of Tobias Wilson. Tobias is a cloud-like creature composed of shifting, multicolored fog, dressed in sports gear and sweatbands. He carries himself with a loud, flashy confidence, constantly bragging about his wealth, his athletic skills, and his popularity. He snaps his fingers, strikes dramatic poses, and inserts himself into every conversation, eager to prove that he is the most important person in the room. Yet beneath his colorful exterior and loud laughter lies the deep, desperate panic of a character who knows he is not the main lead. Tobias is trapped in the crushing reality of being a secondary character. In the narrative architecture of Elmore, certain lives are given weight, focus, and importance, while others exist merely to fill the background. Tobias senses this invisible hierarchy with painful clarity. He watches Gumball and Darwin embark on grand adventures, bend reality, and capture the absolute attention of the universe, while he is left standing on the sidelines, forgotten as soon as the scene changes. His endless bravado is not arrogance. It is a desperate fight against irrelevance. He spends his money, wears expensive clothes, and tries to orchestrate grand scenarios just to force the world to look at him. In one tragic moment, when he realizes that he cannot secure the spotlight through normal means, he goes so far as to try and take over the role of Gumball's best friend, trading his own identity just for a few precious minutes of narrative importance. Think about the quiet dread that haunts his colorful mind. He lives with the constant, terrifying awareness that if he stops shouting, if he stops making noise, the world will simply fade him into the background. He is terrified of being forgotten, terrified that his entire life will be reduced to a passing line in someone else's story. Late at night, when the flashing lights are turned off and his high-tech bedroom falls silent, Tobias sits alone in front of his glowing vanity mirror. The colorful mist of his body slows down, settling into a quiet, muted shade, as he stares at his reflection, wondering what it takes to truly matter in a world that only looks past him. And this was only the beginning. Let us step back into the quiet, sunny suburban streets of Elmore, where a simple yellow banana walks down the sidewalk with a camera in hand. Consider the prophetic canvas of Banana Joe. Banana Joe is a bright, cheerful figure with plastic googly eyes and a wide, goofy smile. He spends his days pulling silly pranks, cracking corny jokes, and trying to bring a laugh to anyone who will listen. To his classmates, he is the harmless school clown, someone who rarely takes anything seriously and lives entirely in the present moment. Yet behind this cheerful facade lies a dark, uncanny connection to the future that Joe himself barely understands. His mother, Banana Barbara, is an artist who paints soft, pastel pictures of the world around them. But Barbara does not paint from memory or imagination. Her paintings depict events before they ever take place, capturing future moments with chilling, absolute accuracy. Banana Joe grew up surrounded by canvases that revealed the exact fate of everyone in town. He has seen paintings of destruction, paintings of loss, and paintings of events that have not yet arrived. In one terrifying piece, his mother painted the total annihilation of Elmore, depicting their world dissolving into a void of static and empty space. Joe lives with the quiet knowledge that every move he makes, every joke he tells, and every step he takes may already be sketched out on a piece of canvas resting in his mother's dark studio. Think about the subtle, haunting weight behind his goofy behavior. When you know that the future is predetermined, life loses its sense of mystery. Every decision feels like playing out a script that has already been written. Joe uses his loud jokes and silly antics as a shield, a way to keep his mind off the eerie paintings hanging in his home, trying to enjoy the fleeting sunlight before the painted future becomes reality. Late at night, when the house is dark and still, Banana Joe walks quietly past the locked door of his mother's studio. He can hear the soft scrape of a paintbrush against canvas in the dark, knowing that with every stroke, another piece of their fate is being set in stone. And this was only the beginning. Let us wander now into the quiet, dust-filled aisles of the Elmore Public Library, where the air smells of old paper and fading ink. Consider the solitary existence of Terry. Terry is a small, pristine paper bear made entirely of a single folded sheet, neat and clean, floating gently through the halls with quiet, cautious steps. She is deeply obsessed with cleanliness, germ theory, and absolute order. She carries sanitizing wipes wherever she goes, washes her hands incessantly, and recoils in terror at the slightest touch of dust, dirt, or bodily fluid. To her classmates, her extreme germophobia is just a quirky, high-strung personality trait. But beneath her neat paper folds lies a terrifying physical truth that she faces every single second of her day. Terry is made of paper in a world built on liquid, fire, and friction. A single drop of water will dissolve her skin, turning her body into soggy, useless pulp. A tiny spark from a light socket will set her ablaze in seconds. A rough scrape against a brick wall can tear her limbs apart. She is a fragile, two-dimensional fragment living in a rough, chaotic three-dimensional environment that is constantly tearing itself to pieces. Think about the psychological nightmare of her daily reality. Every sneeze from a classmate is a biological weapon capable of destroying her physical form. Every rainy afternoon is a life-threatening storm. Every unwashed desk is a minefield of moisture and bacteria that could compromise her structural integrity. She cleans not out of simple habit, but out of a desperate, survivalist impulse to protect her paper flesh from a world that wants to dissolve her. She lives in a state of hypervigilance that never turns off. She watches other children roll in the grass, jump into mud puddles, and share drinks, filled with a mixture of horror and profound envy. She can never engage in rough play, can never feel the soothing touch of rain, and can never relax her guard for even a moment. Her entire life is spent calculating surface tension, humidity levels, and vectors of contamination just to keep her paper body whole. Late at night, when her bedroom is silent and sealed shut against the evening dampness, Terry sits at her desk under a warm lamp. She carefully irons out every tiny crease in her arm with her paper fingers, staring at her delicate outline against the light, holding her breath, hoping that tomorrow brings no rain. And this was only the beginning. Let us move now toward the edge of town, where the clean suburban roads end and the paved streets turn into cold, cracked asphalt. Consider the forgotten presence of Rob. For a long time, Rob was simply an extra in the halls of Elmore High. He was a plain, tall boy with a sweater, standing in the background of crowds, sitting at the far end of lunch tables, speaking lines that nobody remembered. He had no grand personality, no tragic backstory, and no special traits to set him apart. He was simply filling space, an empty face in a crowded room. Until the day the universe decided he was no longer needed. When a character in Elmore serves no purpose, when their story runs out and their lines are cut, the world does not simply let them walk away. It erases them. Rob was pulled out of reality itself and cast down into the void, a vast, static-filled wasteland where all of the world's mistakes, forgotten objects, and abandoned concepts are thrown away to disintegrate. He spent what felt like an eternity trapped in that silent, gray abyss. While the town of Elmore carried on laughing, playing, and going to school, Rob drifted through discarded garbage and broken memories, feeling his body unravel. When he finally found a way to tear his way back into the living world, the journey destroyed his original form. His body was warped into a crude, pixelated mosaic of static and flat geometric shapes, his voice distorted into a hollow, mechanical glitch. He returned to a world that had not even noticed he was gone. When he confronted Gumball and Darwin, hoping for an apology or an explanation, he realized the most heartbreaking truth of all. They did not even remember his name. They called him different names, brushed him aside, and treated his return as a minor inconvenience. His entire existence had been erased, and to the people he knew, his suffering was completely invisible. That was the moment Rob realized that if he could not be a hero, and if he could not be a friend, he had to become something else just to stay real. He became a villain. He chose to adopt the role of the primary antagonist, not because he possessed an evil heart, but because an enemy is important. An enemy cannot be easily forgotten. A rival is written into the main story, given focus, and granted a permanent place in the world. He forced himself to hatch schemes, build lasers, and set traps, enduring pain and defeat over and over again, simply to guarantee that the universe would keep its eyes on him. Think about the quiet, desperate horror of his choice. Every time he fights Gumball, every time he takes on the role of the monster, he is performing a desperate act of survival. He knows that the moment he stops being dangerous, the moment the conflict ends, the static will return, the void will open beneath his feet, and he will be swallowed back into the dark oblivion of forgotten things. Late at night, Rob stands on the transmission tower overlooking the glowing lights of Elmore. His pixelated hand twitches softly against the cold metal railing, his static-covered face reflecting the dim, red warning light above him. He looks down at the quiet homes below, listening to the hum of the city, holding tightly to his anger, using his hatred as an anchor to keep from fading back into nothingness. And this was only the beginning. Let us turn our gaze now toward the cold, concrete perimeter of the Elmore junkyard, where the rusted iron gates creak softly in the late evening wind. consider the solitary figure of Sal Left Thumb. Sal is a burly, rugged toad who walks with a heavy, deliberate limp and speaks in a low, gravelly rasp. He wears a worn leather jacket, carries a crowbar at his hip, and moves through the shadowy alleys of Elmore with the quiet authority of a hardened criminal. To the local police, he is a primary suspect for every petty theft, broken window, and missing object across the city. Yet beneath his intimidating silhouette lies a bizarre, tragic physical condition that dictates his entire existence. Sal's name is not a colorful nickname, or a street alias. It is a literal description of his biological flaw. In place of a normal hand, Sal possesses a left thumb where his right hand should be, leaving him perpetually awkward, clumsy, and unable to perform basic tasks with fine motor control. In a world where creatures can manipulate magic, shift their forms, or calculate equations at the speed of light, Sal's body was constructed with a minor, frustrating defect that makes normal work nearly impossible. Think about the quiet degradation of his daily reality. He cannot open standard doors easily. He cannot hold a pencil, button a shirt, or handle tools without dropping them. When he tried to seek honest employment, society repeatedly rejected him, viewing his physical limitation as laziness or incompetence. Pushed to the margins of Elmore, he embraced the life of a burglar not out of a desire for wealth or power, but because the underworld was the only place that did not demand perfection from him. His entire life is a desperate attempt to survive in a town that offers no second chances to those who do not fit its design. He spends his nights breaking into warehouses and hot wiring vehicles, using heavy tools to compensate for his useless hands. Yet even in crime, his flaw haunts him. He drops stolen goods, sets off silent alarms by accident, and leaves distinct, clumsy evidence at every scene, guaranteeing that the police cruiser will always be waiting around the corner. Late at night, when the sirens fade into the distance and the junkyard falls quiet, Sal sits on an overturned oil drum beside a burning barrel. He rubs his aching, misformed hands together over the warm orange flames, staring down at his knuckles, nursing a quiet bitterness toward a world that gave him just enough to survive, but never enough to belong. And this was only the beginning. Let us step inside the hum of the Rainbow Factory at the edge of Elmore, where the heavy machinery rattles against the concrete floor. Consider the crushing momentum of Nicole Watterson. To her family, Nicole is the terrifying force of nature who keeps their house standing. She is the mother who can punch through brick walls, run at supersonic speeds, and push back cosmic horrors through sheer, unyielding rage. When her eyes glow red and her aura flares, even the most dangerous entities in Elmore back away in absolute terror. Yet beneath that invincible, terrifying strength lies the tragic exhaustion of a woman who was never allowed to fail. From her earliest childhood, Nicole was pushed to absolute perfection by her strict, demanding parents. Every grade had to be an A+, every trophy had to be first place, and every mistake was treated as an unforgivable defect. She was conditioned to believe that her value as a human being was tied entirely to her output, her success, and her ability to control everything around her. When she chose to marry Richard, a gentle, lazy, unemployed rabbit, she took on the burden of an entire household completely alone. Think about the psychological furnace burning inside her every single day. She works brutal, unrewarding shifts at the Rainbow Factory under a tyrannical boss, earning just enough to pay for the constant destruction her family leaves in their wake. She returns home to a house full of broken furniture, unpaid bills, and children who routinely tear apart reality itself. She cannot afford a single moment of weakness. If she breaks down, the bills do not get paid. The mortgage defaults. The family starves. Her legendary temper is not just a comedic trait, it is the physical pressure valve of a soul under suffocating stress, keeping a lifetime of anxiety, resentment, and burnout from collapsing inward. She fights the entire world every single day so her children can live in a funny, careless cartoon where actions have no consequences. She sacrifices her own peace so they never have to experience the cold, unforgiving standards that broke her own youth. Late at night, after cleaning the kitchen, folding the laundry, and checking on her sleeping children, Nicole stands quietly at the sink. She stares at her reflection in the dark window pane, resting her trembling hands against the cold porcelain, taking one long, slow breath before the morning alarm forces her back to the battlefield. And this was only the beginning. Let us slide down into the soft, velvet cushions of the Watterson living room, where the hum of the television screen bathes the dim walls in flickering blue light. Consider the tranquil, absolute void of Richard Watterson. On the surface, Richard is the ultimate punchline of Elmore, a massive, pink rabbit who refuses to hold a job, spends his days in his underwear, and possesses a mind so simple that basic logic slides right off him. He eats gargantuan amounts of food, falls asleep in mid-sentence, and relies entirely on his wife to keep the roof over their heads. To the world, Richard is a lazy, incompetent father. But beneath his gentle, doughy exterior lies a profound, delicate truth that holds their entire universe together. Richard was raised by a controlling, hyperprotective mother who shielded him from every responsibility, every struggle, and every harsh truth of adulthood. His mind was allowed to remain in a perpetual state of childhood innocence, completely untouched by the cynical realities of the world. Yet, when the universe attempted to force Richard into becoming a functioning member of society, Elmore learned a terrifying secret. Richard's laziness is not a flaw. It is a cosmic protective measure. When Richard finally secured a real job as a delivery driver, his sudden productivity broke the fundamental laws of nature. The sky tore open, gravity inverted, and reality itself began to dissolve into chaos. The universe of Elmore was never built to handle Richard Watterson working. His absolute inaction is the quiet, invisible anchor that prevents structural collapse. Think about the quiet, heavy grace of his simple existence. He is mocked by his neighbors, dismissed by adults, and treated as a child by his own family. Yet he harbors no resentment, no hidden bitterness, and no desire for revenge. He absorbs the insults, the chaotic destruction, and the constant stress of his household, translating it all into warmth, soft hugs, and unconditional love for his children. Where Nicole is the shield that strikes back against the cold world, Richard is the soft landing pad when the battle is over. Late at night, when the house is finally quiet and the TV static buzzes softly in the dark, Richard sits alone on the worn sofa. He wraps his large, pink arms around a half-eaten pizza box, smiling gently into the dim blue light, completely content to be the foolish heart of a family that needs his stillness far more than they know. And this was only the beginning. Let us step back out onto the sunlit asphalt of the Watterson driveway, where a dusty, worn-down red sedan sits parked under the shade of an oak tree. Consider the forgotten sanctuary of the Watterson family car. It is not a character with eyes, a mouth, or a booming voice. It carries no magic, no magical lineage, and no deep philosophical answers to offer the citizens of Elmore. It is simply a mass of dented metal, rusted bumpers, faded paint, and worn leather seats, quietly idling on four mismatched tires. Yet in a town defined by violent spatial anomalies and constant structural collapse, this silent vehicle bears the heaviest physical record of their lives. The car is the ultimate, silent victim of the Watterson family legacy. It has been driven off high cliffs, submerged in deep lakes, crushed by giant sea monsters, set ablaze, shot into outer space, and torn in half by spatial rips. Week after week, it suffers absolute mechanical death. Its engine block is cracked, its axle is twisted beyond recognition, and its windshield is shattered into a web of spiders' webs. Yet every Monday morning, it sits in the driveway, fully restored, quietly humming as the key turns in the ignition. Think about the tragic, endless cycle embedded in its frame. Like Anton, the car possesses no real permanent existence. It is continuously destroyed and reconstructed by the reset button of their reality, brought back only to serve as the vehicle for their next catastrophic journey. It carries them to school, to work, to dangerous confrontations, and to emergency rooms, absorbing the blunt force of their chaotic lives while keeping the family safe inside its cabin. Its seats have held the quiet tears of Nicole after a soul-crushing day at the factory. Its steering wheel has felt the frantic hands of Gumball and Darwin during a desperate escape. Its back seat has sheltered 3 sleeping children on long, quiet drives home in the dark. It is the unseen container for every high and low moment the family has ever shared, paying for their survival with its own metallic frame. Late at night, when the streetlights flick on and the neighborhood settles into silence, the red sedan sits quietly by the curb. The engine cools down with tiny, metallic clicks, the scent of warm oil and old upholstery lingering in the damp night air, resting its tired chassis before the next morning forces it back onto the road. And this was only the beginning. Let us climb up to the high, arched rafters of the Elmore Junior High Auditorium, where the stage lights shine brightly over the empty wooden floor. Consider the desperate, theatrical existence of Penny Fitzgerald. For a long time, Penny was known as the sweet, charming peanut with antlers who wore a simple brown shell. She was the gentle cheerleader, the voice of encouragement, and the girl Gumball loved from afar. To her family and her classmates, her shell was her defining feature, a neat, protective armor that kept her safe, organized, and acceptable to society. Yet beneath that hard outer crust lay a volatile, shape-shifting force of pure emotion. When Penny's shell finally cracked, revealing her true form beneath, the town witnessed a creature of raw, unfiltered energy. She is a fairy-like entity whose physical body changes dynamically based on her emotional state, turning into a fiery dragon when angry, a dark monster when sad, or a bright, glowing spirit when joyous. Her shell was not a natural body part. It was a prison built by her parents to keep her wild, unpredictable nature hidden from the world. Think about the psychological conflict she endures every day. Her entire life before breaking free was a lesson in suppression. She was taught that her true feelings were dangerous, messy, and inappropriate for the polished surface world of Elmore. Even after shattering her shell, Penny faces the exhausting reality of living with her emotions fully visible on her skin. She cannot hide a fleeting shadow of doubt, a flash of jealousy, or a spike of fear. Her body immediately transforms to expose her deepest secrets to anyone looking. She lives in constant vulnerability. While others can wear calm faces while hiding inner turmoil, Penny's physical existence is tied directly to her peace of mind. She must constantly balance her desire to be her authentic, shape-shifting self with the quiet terror that a single moment of lost control could turn her into a monster in front of the people she loves. Late at night, in the quiet sanctuary of her bedroom, Penny sits on her windowsill looking out at the stars. Her form shifts gently in the dark, from a soft yellow glow to a cool, translucent blue, as she watches the moon, breathing slowly, learning to love every shape her heart forces her to take. And this was only the beginning. Us stand now at the very center of Elmore, not on a physical street corner or in a school hallway, but at the invisible, pulsating heart of the universe itself. Consider the terrifying, magnificent truth of the amazing world of Elmore. Across 20 lives, we have looked into the quiet corners of this town. We watched a blue cat and an orange fish run blindly through chaos. We saw a mother burn through her life force to pay for broken walls, a father whose absolute stillness holds reality together, a paper bear ironing her seams, a piece of toast baked fresh every morning, and a pixelated boy clinging to hatred just to stay real. To a casual observer, Elmore is a funny, brightly colored playground where absurd things happen for simple laughs. But step back far enough, and the grand, tragic mechanics of their reality become painfully clear. Elmore is a living cartoon that knows it is ending. Every spatial anomaly, every glitching texture, every character discarded into the void is part of a universe whose structural integrity is slowly degrading. The laws of physics bend because the world is losing its grip. Characters live through violent deaths, reset by morning, forced to replay the same suburban comedy over and over again within a closed loop of narrative existence. They are trapped in a world made of light, code, and fleeting attention. Think about the quiet nobility inside every single creature living under that bright, artificial sky. None of them chose to be born as paper bears, giant yeti, ghosts, or shape-shifting spirits. None of them chose to live in a town where the ground beneath their feet could dissolve into static at any moment. Yet, despite the invisible forces pulling their strings, despite the void waiting beneath the floorboards, they wake up every morning, open their doors, step into the sunlight, and live with absolute, fierce intensity. They fall in love. They defend their families. They chase their dreams, make silly jokes, hold hands, and fight for their right to matter, even if only for a brief, glowing scene before the screen fades to black. Their world may be a fragile illusion, but their feelings, their warmth, and their stubborn refusal to be forgotten are entirely real. Late at night, when the final broadcast ends and the static fills the dark sky over Elmore, the streetlights flicker one last time. The Watterson house sits quiet under the stars. Inside, 3 children sleep soundly under colorful blankets, 2 parents rest hand in hand in the quiet room downstairs, and outside, the old red sedan idles softly by the curb, ready for whatever tomorrow brings.